Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to those joining from other parts of the world. Welcome to the AVPN 2020 virtual conference, and especially to this workshop on the gender-responsive climate cost-benefit analysis tool. I am Diana Watson, Partnerships Manager at AVPN, and I am delighted to have you join us today. In today's workshop, we will be introducing a new tool developed by WOCAN in partnership with UNDP. It will also introduce a W+ standard developed by WOCAN to measure and monetize women's economic benefits within products to generate co-benefit units that can be coupled with carbon credits from climate projects. This will be a highly interactive session where direct feedback on the tool will be sought. So we invite you to turn your cameras on, to introduce yourself in the group chat if you have not already done so. And at certain points during the workshop, we will unmute you so you can join in the discussion. The session will start with a welcome and presentation on the tool before moving into breakout rooms. We will then convene back in the main room to hear about our shared learnings. A couple of housekeeping points before we start. Feel free to share ideas in the group chat and also questions that you might have. For those who cannot see the group chat whilst we're sharing our screen, please move your mouse towards the bottom of the screen where a toolbar should appear, and chat will be one of those options. We're going to be doing a fair bit of screen sharing over the next hour, so do feel free to switch your video view settings to grid so you can see the other people that are in the room. You can do this by hovering over my video and selecting from a variety of options that work for you. Questions will be picked up by our team and flagged to the moderator for their attention at specific points throughout the workshop. And if we don't get to your question, we can certainly pass them on to the WOCAN team to address after the session. For anyone who has technical difficulties, please send a private message to my colleague Fei Ge. You will see her in the chat drop-down as one of the co-hosts. Alternatively, feel free to raise your hand. For those who have not done this before, this option should be on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Once raised, one of our team will be able to reach out to you personally to see how we can help. The session will last for 2 hours. We do not have any scheduled breaks, but should you need to step away for a minute or two, you'd be welcome to do so. Just please ensure that you mute your microphone. Now, I would like to introduce our moderator and lead for this workshop, Jeanette Gurung. Jeanette has been an innovator at the nexus of gender equality and climate-related sectors for 3 decades, working with both public and private organizations and projects. She is founder and executive director of WOCAN, a global network with over 1,350 members in 113 countries, to support capacity building for women's leadership and empowerment and gender integration. Jeanette co-founded the Women and Climate Impact Fund to mobilize blended financial instruments in climate mitigation and adaptation projects that incorporate high levels of gender equality for women's empowerment. Jeanette, over to you. Jeanette, you might be on mute at the moment.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you so much, Diana. And thanks to all of you for coming and putting up with whatever technological glitches have already occurred, as well as those yet to come. Welcome to this is a skill building workshop that we're very thrilled to be able to offer you. I should note that we had intentionally thought that we would have only 30 people in this workshop, and we have had such a large request from those others on a waiting list. So we've decided to open up and allow everyone in. So we may have as many as 47 people today, which is wonderful. All welcome. I'm very happy today to be joined by my 2 colleagues, Nisha Anta and Dibya Gurung, both of whom have been working with WOCAN for geez, I think a decade now. And they will be both helping us with the breakout room activities. Nisha Anta is the regional coordinator of WOCAN for Asia. And Dibya Gurung is a core associate and a gender trainer of ours. We've all worked very closely together on gender and climate issues for a number of years now. Dibya and Nisha are both participating from Nepal today. So with no further ado, Faye, could you start the presentation, please? Okay, so this is the title slide, obviously. Could you move to the next one, please? Okay. Okay, so as you all signed up for and are aware of, that this skill building session is primarily to share with you this tool that we've been working with UNDP to develop on the gender responsive climate cost benefit analysis tool. However, we also wanted to take this opportunity to share with you an introduction to the W+ standard. So there's much more to say about it, and we won't have time today to get into it, but it does have its own dedicated website. And I'll just present 2 slides here to give a little bit of information. It was developed to measure and monetize women's empowerment benefits within projects at the community, at the project level. The idea here is in relation to climate, that we are able to generate co-benefit units called W+ units that can be stacked onto or coupled with carbon credits for climate projects. I'll talk more about that. And the second objective is to present this tool to you on how to measure monetary and non-monetary costs and benefits for women and men, either related to climate change or climate change projects. And we're going to make this as participatory a skill building session as we know how to do, which is to engage you in breakout rooms and get your feel for this tool, and then be able to send us more information on your feedback of how you found that tool to be. Okay? Next slide. First, we want to, before we move to the next slide, we do want to, before we get to this one, we want to ask you a few questions. So we'd share a poll with you to find out who's in the room. So can you activate the poll, please?
I'm sorry, Jeanette, a tiny technical hitch with the poll, but maybe you can move on to the next slide and we'll sort this out for you in a moment.
Okay, although I see the poll now on the screen. Yes. So the first poll is asking you what capacity you're joining. So please tell us, just try to get a sense of who's in the room. Interesting, okay. As always, we have a mix. Nice to see this from corporates, some incubators, accelerators, private equity people. Don't have anyone from government yet, which is a pity. But anyways, of course, some good NGOs, service providers. Okay, thank you so much. I think we can, let's get a few more seconds to, if anybody's still coming in on this. Okay, let's end the poll, and here's the results. So the largest share is of NGOs, 22%, but actually it's really a nice mix across that. So I think we have a second poll as well, right? Yes, so we're trying to get a sense here of how many of you are familiar with both gender analysis and cost benefit analysis. We understand that lots of people have not ever done either one of these, and that's fine. Okay, we have a lot of people who are not only familiar with gender analysis, but have used it. And even some who are familiar with the cost benefit analysis. Fantastic. Something we don't always encounter. So that's wonderful. Good to know. So we've got a lot of experts in the room. That's going to be fantastic. It's going to make the use of the tool and your feedback to the tool all the more valuable. So thank you for that. Okay, Faye, if we can shift now to the next slide. It's a very short introduction about WOCAN and who we are. So as you can see, we are a US-based NGO. We're, I think, 15 years old now. We have as many members, as Diana said, around the world in 113 countries. All of our members are women as well as men who are working in these sectors of agriculture and natural resource management with a strong interest in commitment to gender equality within that. From that wide membership, we have selected a number of core associates, many of whom you can see in this beautiful photo, of people across Asia and Africa. Not yet enough in Latin America. We hope to change that. We have staff around the world, and we are increasingly calling ourselves a provider of gender and climate services. We offer, and we have been offering, gender training, gender integration, management and coaching for many years, assessment, and also technical assistance with the W+ standard. Okay, Faye. And our purpose, as part of our theory of change, is really to advance women's empowerment and collective action, which we believe very strongly in, to tackle climate change, poverty, and food insecurity within what we call enabling environments within institutions. So we do a lot of assessment for capacity building, for gender mainstreaming, and also the technical assistance, as I had mentioned. Okay, Faye, to now tell you a little bit about the W+ standard. So it is a standard certification scheme developed in, I think it was 2015. It provides metrics and procedures that quantify, verify, and monetize women's empowerment results. It's a results-based framework, measuring framework. It can be used for designing a project as well as monitoring results within a project. So it's not specific to climate change or climate-related projects, but it's particularly appropriate to this use, we think. So it's very similar to a carbon, the measurement of carbon. The architecture is based on a carbon measurement architecture, and it does the same thing. The use of it generates units that are quantified, and those units are also verified by a third-party verifier who's a social auditor. And we are verifying improvement for women's conditions within 6 different domains. You can see on the picture on the left side, these are the 6 areas that can be measured. We've developed the methodologies that incorporate both qualitative and quantitative data points. And then it sort of measure, in order to generate W+ units, you need, as a project developer, you need to choose at least one of these domains, but you could choose all 6. So we start with a measurement of the baseline conditions within the domains that are suited to the project, and then at a later time, we'll measure the results of those projects. We are building the market for this. There are purchasers, buyers. These units are tradable, and there are brokers that are selling. It's also one of the conditions of the W+ standard is that at least 20% of the value of each of those units needs to be transferred in cash or equivalent of cash payment to the women's groups within the project itself that was measured. And that's because of our very strong belief in the impact of sharing, of supporting women's groups, women's collectives. And we believe very strongly they have their own ideas of how they could best use that money to suit their community. So that's the condition for it. It can be stacked on, a W+ unit can be stacked on to a carbon unit. Doesn't have to be, it's also a standalone, but it can also be used with, for those of you out there who know about carbon systems, measurement systems, it can be also part and parcel of a verified carbon unit. So it's a label for women's empowerment onto a VCU. And I'd like to just make one more announcement about that here, which is that I think 2 weeks ago, the World Bank procurement offer, which is made to offset the travel of World Bank staff, for example, internally, has now issued a statement that's saying the W+ standard is a desired and preferred standard for its carbon emissions procurement. So there we go. We have an endorsement from that. So just one more slide on the W+ standard. Okay, if you could switch to that one. We did win an award from the UNFCCC for Momentum for Change, Women for Results, based on the project in Nepal, which is, I think, a classic, for us, a classic example of the W+, in that it was applied to an existing carbon mitigation project implemented by the government of Nepal to set up these biogas units, as such as in the picture, very small, attached to a toilet. The implementing agency of Nepal was generating this not for women's empowerment, but rather for carbon units. It was selling those to Nordic countries, for example, and not thinking a lot about what are the benefits that women may also be accruing from this technology. So we decided, in discussion with women's groups, about what was women's empowerment and what aspects of this project were benefiting them. Looked like time saving was the one that was most influential. And so we went in and just measured time. We generated time units. We found out that women were saving 2.5 hours every single day. That doesn't even account for the saving from walking up the mountain, down the mountain, carrying the fuel wood, cutting the fuel wood, chopping it up, and then, of course, sitting in a kitchen full of smoke, miserable conditions. There were health implications. We didn't measure any of that. We could have. We just measured the time saving, generated W+ units, sold some of those units, still have some left to sell. And then we returned that money to the women's groups that were involved with the project, and also watched to see what they did with that. And it was very interesting. They would use it was not a huge amount of money, but they would use it for sort of expanding their kitchen gardens, putting into their savings and loans groups, making a payment on a water supply system. So it was sort of all the right things. We also asked women how they used their time saving. They used it to do more things in the community, to help their children's education, to themselves learn new skills for climate smart agriculture, for example. So we realized as well that this could be a powerful tool for, one, channeling funding directly down to these women's groups, and two, to supporting climate resilience types of activities that in fact were being designed by those women themselves. It's a very powerful model. There's a lot more to say. I did include the website here, so please feel free. Everything we've got on the W+ is available at that website. And so you definitely talk to us more if you're interested. Okay, Faye, we will shift now into the tool. So this is a tool that WOCAN has been working with the UNDP office in Bangkok for the last couple of years. And they have this very interesting program on strengthening governance of climate change finance to enhance gender equality. Their purpose in this is primarily to work with governments in the Asia Pacific region who are making decisions about how to allocate national budgets, local budgets, subnational budgets for climate mitigation and adaptation activities. So trying to provide them tools that would allow them to look a little bit beyond the usual box that they're using to make that decision. So this is what they've been working on, a climate-related cost-benefit analysis approach, and then we came along to add the gender aspects of this. Really difficult thing to do, sort of groundbreaking. It's not going to be perfect, but you'll see our attempts to do this. This came again from this growing demand from people to ask for more information. How do we determine what are the costs and benefits of various scenarios, various actions, so that we can choose the right one? And also this view that it's really now high time to be providing this equal priority to social impact assessment, rather than just viewing within a cost-benefit analysis and just seeing things as financial, but also starting to see things that were maybe intangible, but to still put a value onto them somehow. So we developed this. We've decided to field test it in Nepal, which is, you can probably guess, a place we have a lot of boots on the ground and a lot of experience and connections. So we did this in just last December. We developed this methodology. It's very participatory with the community. And we also had the inputs of officials and other stakeholders in Nepal at this time. If you have questions, and you may well, please put your questions in the chat session or something, and we'll try to, at the end of this slideshow, I'll try to get to those. So we looked at first, of course, of CBA. And for those of you, and there are many in this group that are on the session today that have some experience with familiarity with cost-benefit analysis. But from our understanding, we find it to be the traditional one to be a bit limited. And as I said, to compare the monetary value only of costs and benefits. And there's some limitations to this. One is that it aggregates all stakeholders into one category or limited categories. It relies on tools and principles of welfare economics to arrive at the social value of resources that are consumed and services provided. And it focuses on the financial sort of bottom line. It doesn't give priority to social impacts or non-monetized impacts. And the intangibles are unlikely to make any impact on the decision-making process because they're off on their side and they're not part of the mainstream tool here. So we said we need to go beyond this, go beyond financial aspects to capture those critical benefits and cost that may not be monetizable. But we think even if it's not monetizable, it needs to be incorporated into this assessment. See what you think. Let us hear what your feedback is on this. And we also, of course, had to bring a gender analysis to this. So we had to look at how women view these costs and benefits and how men view these costs and benefits. Next slide, Faye. So never sure who's in the audience, but of course we're increasingly aware these days of how climate change impacts men and women differently. And this is largely based on women's roles for securing water, food, fuel. Women very dependent on natural resources in many rural areas of Asia, but even to some degree urban areas. And then these things that are threatened by climate change threaten women's role, time, knowledge, and resources related to how they're managing those resources. And of course, the gender norms that are across all the countries hinder women's access to income, to land rights, to political participation, which in turn limits their adaptive capacity to be able to handle climate change and climate changes that are coming up. But on the other side, women have this very unique potential, we believe, because of their roles in these spaces to contribute to climate change mitigation and adaptation, and also to the community development, which we've seen stronger than ever as a result of the pandemic, but we won't go into that. But really the other three reasons are just the human rights aspect, and increasingly to be able to address SDG targets, which are seen as precondition to the successful meeting of all SDG targets. And then the other arguments are around efficiency. I mean, when you've got women managing these resources, you certainly need to have them included as fully as possible. And then the focus on empowerment to close those gaps that exist so that it enables them to participate and be efficient players in the space. Faye, who should use this framework? We'd like to hear more from you about this, but we think it's definitely, as I mentioned, from UNDP's original thinking about the climate and financial planners from government departments, also NGOs, climate project designers, implementers, evaluators, reviewers, hopefully funders and investors that can also use this kind of tool to mitigate and to understand where the risks are to investment decisions, how to allocate funds in ways that are gender responsive, and based on local perceptions if we really truly want this to be effective and sustainable. Faye, when to be used is a different thing. We think that at least two different phases it could be used. One is, again, across the life of a project to determine the feasibility of a particular activity and identify the risk of those projects when identifying, designing, and securing financing for the project, and we could call this ex ante. And then the ex post use of it would be to evaluate the impact after the completion. So let's see how you see it as well. Faye, the next one is that the features of the matrix, and I'm going to show you the matrix. It's very simple. That's the tool that we're going to send you off to the breakout rooms to work on. But the feature of it is, again, it treats these unquantifiable, non-financial costs and benefits equally with the financial quantifiable benefits and cost. We don't want to privilege one or the other. And it requires addressing impacts for both individuals and groups, communities. Sometimes it's the same, but we do need to consider that there are groups that have group interest that needs to be addressed, perhaps separate from the individual response. And it recognizes, and this is very critical, it recognizes the intersectionality of class, ethnicity, disability, age, sexuality, because these individuals and groups will have benefits and costs that are not necessarily the same. Women and men are not monolithic groups. It takes a little bit of extra effort to understand those specificities. So Faye, the next slide is really about only two key concepts, which for all of you who know gender, this is elementary, of course, but we want to make sure that these are understood by everybody, that we need to think about practical needs, but also strategic needs. So practical needs being the material situations of women and men, strategic interest being those that are related to social status of women in relation to men. This is where we talk more about decision-making or control over power and resources. Okay, Faye, so this is the matrix. If you can all see that this will also be in all the breakout rooms, but you can see it's quite simple. Just want to look at all of those different categories, both from individual as well as group aspects. And we will also, you'll get instructions for this for in the breakout room, but remembering the need to think about the intersectionality aspects of the stakeholders that you will. So what we'll be asking you in the breakout room is to be thinking about all the potential stakeholders who are either benefiting, have a cost or benefit from either a climate-related project or a naturally occurring climatic event, perhaps that's induced certain cost and benefits potentially into a community. So in order to do this, we are going to, well, first let me ask if there's any questions. Maybe Misha, you could, if there are any, you could pipe up. No? Okay, no, she's shaking her head. Good. So you've all got it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to show you a video. And we're doing this so that we're setting a scenario so that we're all on the same page and we have a sense of what kind of community or what kind of scenario do we think this tool can be applied to. So we're going to do this through a video we found called Missing: The Forgotten Women in India's Climate Plans. And this was made to convince policymakers of what can be achieved if women become integrated in climate change planning. It follows this group of Nahi women and their daily fight against climate change impacts. And it shows how the resources they use and the kind of costs and benefits that they're encountering as they go through this. It's 9 minutes long. I think it's a good film. And so I hope nobody goes off for a break. It's split into 3 segments. Each one is going to show you a different group of women working in farming, fishing, and forest harvesting, respectively. And then we will use those different examples as case studies when you go into the breakout room right after the video. So with no further ado, can we have the video, please?
পুরুষরাই সব কিছু, আমরা মহিলারা তো কিছুই না। এমন শ্বাস একটা রব হবে, মানুষ ভয়ে থাকতে পারবে না। তার সেই ঢেউ, সেই আওয়াজ, মানুষ ভয়ে থাকতে পারবে না। নদীর জল আসা মানে গরু বাছুর পশু পাখি যা সংসার করে আমরা যা পুষেছি সবই নষ্ট হবে, সবার ক্ষতি হয়ে যাবে। আর এবার এই নদীর জলে আর চাষ হয় না। এই চাষ না হওয়াতে আমাদের বাড়িতে দুর্ভিক্ষ। হ্যাঁ, আমি মাঝে মধ্যে গিয়ে দেখি, আমার ভীষণ দুঃখ হয়। চাষের জায়গা, ওইখানে সবজি হতো, লঙ্কার চাষ হতো, ধান হতো, ও যখন হয় না প্রতিদিন গিয়ে একটা ঘাস তুলছি, কি মাটিটা দেখছি যেমন হওয়ার মতন কিনা, জলটা কতটা নুনাত্ব আছে।
ಹಳ್ಳದ ನೀರು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಬಂದೆ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಆಗದೆ ಬೆಳಚ ಕೊಟ್ಟೋಗದೆ. ವಾತಾವರಣ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗ ಹೀಗದ್ದ, ಮಳೆ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಬಿತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಬೆಳಚ ಆಗೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಬೆಳೆದೋಯ್ತು ಕೆಳಗೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಅತ್ತೆರ ಕಾಲ್ಗತಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ರಸಿ ಬೆಳಿತಿರ್ತೀವಿ. ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಸ್ಕೀಮ್ ಇದ್ದು ಚಿಪ್ಪಿದೆ ಅಂತದ್ದು ಬರಲಿಲ್ಲ ನಮಗೆ. ಈಗ ಆ ವಾತಾವರಣ ಹೋಗಿ ಈ ವರ್ಷ ಏನು ಹ್ಯಾಗೆ ದಂಧೆ ಮಾಡೋದೇನ ನಾವು, ಭಾಳ ನಮಗೆ ಕಷ್ಟ ಮೀನುಗಾರರಿಗೆ.
The bivalves start emerging from the mud flats once the salinity start increasing, and increasing salinity only after the withdrawal of the monsoon. And as monsoon withdrawal is getting delayed due to the changes in wind patterns which we are witnessing recently, then the bivalve production also gets delayed. Wind patterns naturally change with the rise in temperature. So now with the new changes, there is definitely going to be a toll on fisheries.
ಒಕ್ಕಯ್ಯನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಪೋರ್ಸ್ಟೆಡ್ ಮೀನ್ದನೆ ಡ್ರೈ ಫಿಶ್ ಮೀನ್ದನೆ ಬೇಲೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಎಂಕ್ಲು ಬಂದೆರಡು ಕಣಪಿನ ಮೀನು ಅಂಡ ಈ ಸತಿ ಮೀನ್ದ ಅಭಾವ ಮತ್ತಾದ ಮೀನು ಭಾರಿ ಕಮ್ಮಿ. ಎಂಕ್ಲು ಮೀನು ಬಾರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬೋಟ್ ಬೈಟಿ ನಾನು ಎಂಕ್ಲು ಅಲ್ಪ ಕಾತ ಒಂದು ಎಪ್ಪುಂಟು ತೋಣದು ಒಂದು ಪಿರ ಬರ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ಮಾತ್ರ ಗಾಳಿದ ನೆಟ್ಟಲ್ಲ, ಈ ವರ್ಷದ ನೆಟ್ಟಲ್ಲ. ಈ ಸತಿ ಭಾರಿ ಒಂದು ಉಲ್ಟಲ್ಲ ಕಣೆ, ಈ ವರ್ಷದ ಮಟ್ಟಕ್ಕೆ ಭಾರಿ ನಷ್ಟ. ನೆಗ್ಲೇನೆ ತಾಟೆ ಬೊಕ್ಕ ಚೊರಕೆ ಬಂದು ಮೀನು ಮಲ್ಲ ಬೀಲಾಯ್ತಂದು ಇಂಟ ಪೂತೆಲ್ಲ ಕನೆ ಮೀನು ಅವು ಮಲ್ಲ ಅವು ಬರೋಂಕಿನ ಅವಳ ಕಡಿಮೆ. ಉಡೈಪೋತು ಮಾತ ಬೊಂಬಾಯಿ ಪೋತುನ ದಾಂಡ ಮನ್ಪಿನ ದಯಪನ್ನಗ ಬರ್ಪುಂಡು ಹಚ್ಚಿದೆ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಪೋಲ್ ಬಂದಾರ್ದ ಅವಾಗ ಅವು ಅಲ್ಪನಿದ್ದಾನೆ ನೆಟ್ಟದಾನೆ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ಬೋದು ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ದಕ್ಕಲು ಮಗುವಿಗೆ ಆತ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಿತ್ತು. ಕಾಂಡೆ ಖಾಲಿ ಬಾಕ್ಸ್ ತಂದು ಪೋಪೇರೈತೆ ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟ್ಗೆ ಮೀನು ಚಿಕ್ಕುದು ತಲೆಕಾಯಿ ಆಯ್ತು ತಡ್ಡೆ ಕುಳೋಣ ಎಂತ ಒಡೆ ಬೋಪಿನು ಎಲ್ಲದಾದ ಅಲ್ಪನು ಎಲ್ಲೆಗೆ ಜೋಕುಳಿನ ಶಾಲೆಗಿಂತ ಕಡಪನು ಬುತ್ತಿ ಕೊಡ್ದು.
চাদানার মতন হয়ে গেছে, ওগুলো দেখবে তাহলে সার হচ্ছে।
সারটা কতদিন পচাতে হবে?
ওইটা 40 থেকে 45 দিন। বা আয়লা টালা হলো, ওখানে নোনা জলটাও অনেকটা ঠেক খায় ওয়ালটা থাকলে। এবারে আলে আমি সবজি করছি, ড্রেনের ওপরে মাচা করে সবজি হচ্ছে। মাঠে তো আমার মাছ হতো না, ওটা মাছ ছাড়ছি, মাছ হচ্ছে। এই যে মুরগি ঘরটা পুকুরের উপরে, পুকুরে এবারে মাছের ওখানে কিছু খাবার দেওয়া হলো মুরগিকে, সেটাও কিছুটা পড়লো পুকুরে, এবং মুরগির বীজটাও পড়লো, সেটা মাছের খাবার হলো। এদিকে মাছটা বাড়ে খুব তাড়াতাড়ি। এখন তো আমি মনে করছি আমার খুব ভালোই লাভ হয়েছে, এখন আমার হাতে পয়সা আছে, সবজি বাজারে দিচ্ছি বা মাছে সব রকম চারদিক দিয়ে এখনো পয়সা আছে। সেটাই একটা চিন্তা ভাবনা সরকার করুক, যে মেয়েরা স্বাধীনভাবে তাদের নিজের ইচ্ছার মতন তারাই যেটা করতে চাইবে সেইটাই যেন হয়।
2005 में निम्नावली बारमिला जानकारी मिली तो पंचों और सरपंच समूह नियम कानून बनाई, जो खास रूप काटोल 500 रुपया दंड और जो हरी पत्ती काटोल 100 रुपया दंड। तो ने दिन पर ले जा और दतई लेलाम करी जाए। ये तरीका हम सैनिल जंगो बचा जंगो में हम पतेल लाबेर जैविक खाद बनानो, जैविक खाद के लिए हमारे पुरान खेत ले छ जैक हमोगे ज्ञान ले छ, अधिकार ले छ, हक ले छ। जय खेत के करनो तो हम उगे अपन आस पास में, पड़ोस में और रिश्तेदारों के लिए बांट सकनो खेत की। जैक लीजिए हम आदमी के ने पूछा। आज नकदी फसल में जलवायु परिवर्तन एकदम फर्क पड़ना। अगर हम बदलते मौसम अनुसार लड़ाई लड़ना तो पुरान खेत जंगल जरूरी बचान छ, ताकि समाज में हम सैन्य के ताकत मिले।
ওই জোরটা করতে পারবে না যে তোমাদের নামে কিছু নেই, তোমরা কি খাবে কি না খাবে তোমরাই জানো। এই কথা যখন থাকবে আমাদের নামে তখন আর এই কথাটা বলতে পারবে না।
And Jeanette, back over to you. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, thanks. I thought that was a perfect scenario setting video that gives us some ideas of cost and benefits. And you can see that this is, in many cases, these are really inspirational women. We find women like this all around the world, but you can see how without policies and plans to support them, how difficult and challenging this could be, but with the right policy decisions, it can really change things. So I'll let you talk in your groups more about these. We will explore in these kind of, what we're going to ask you to do is the matrix will be presented on kind of a whiteboard, virtual whiteboard in the room. And we would like to ask you to work in these 3 breakout groups which we will move you into soon. And then you will be asked to provide your inputs into filling out those blank boxes within the matrix to the best that you're able to do so. So what's going to happen is, as soon as I say go ahead, you're automatically going to appear in one of these breakout groups. There will be a moderator from the group. You do not have to appoint somebody as a moderator or a rapporteur. We've taken care of all that for you. So it will ask you on your screen to accept to be taken into the breakout room. So you say yes, and voila, there you are. That will last for about 30-35 minutes. This is your chance to give us your ideas, suggestions. Also, if you have comments and questions as well. We are using this session to basically fill out and get your inputs into the matrix and get you to practice the use of the matrix. But if you have other concerns as well, please do share those. The groups are bigger than we originally thought. I think that'll be okay, but you'll get instructions on how you can best participate in this group. Okay, AVPN, take it away.
The interesting discussion that we had was about, the non-financial benefits and non-financial costs, as to how will a project actually use that in terms of planning, because it's easier to use the financial benefit and financial cost of the project as a you just present it in terms of number, but how can a project actually use that? Is it more of listing so many things out, so it could be so much, and it could be even beyond the project's objective. But how can a project actually use it? So that kind of discussion we had, and then we had a good mix of both, people who are working on investment and researchers and NGOs. So it was a really interesting discussion. Thanks, Jeanette.
Thank you so much, Nisha. Your group was looking at which scenario we're using as a.
We're using the farming, but we also went into a little bit in forestry as well.
Yeah,
sorry, the fishers and then forestry. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Divya? Can you unmute, Divya? You're muted. You can't. Okay, perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So ours was the forestry group, and we a lot of interesting discussions were generated. A lot of questions were there. I think the use of metrics, as I see, was quite easy. We only had to discuss a little bit whether it was strategic or whether it was a practical kind of a thing in some, because they were overlapping. Because I think most of them were gender people in our, who had that. So it was easy to put, in the matrix. The interesting part that came was, what to look into, how deeply we should go into discussions. For example, in our group, first we were only focusing on this whole nice, rosy picture of these women's, organized women's group who were, following the rules, conserving the forest and all. But we had a lot of good discussions on what happens to the other group who are who are the victims, not victims, who are the violators of the forest, So in that, I think a very good discussion also I want to share out here was what generated was, and then the question came so how do we do different groups, when we are, if there are many groups, how do we do, how important it is to also capture their, these violators issues or their cost and benefits for them, so that we can make them non-violators, or we can bring them into groups. So I think we were in the middle of very good discussion, but it got stopped.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think we didn't have enough time in our group either. Our group had the shellfish, and so our basic scenario was one of disaster without a lot of positive aspects to it. So we started out thinking much more about the cost, the financial cost, the non-financial cost. But then I think some of us thought, okay, if we're talking about that in relation to a natural disaster, for example, then we can also think about what are the mitigations of that, what are the actions that a fund, investor, a project would take, and then how do we think about those in different ways. And so we quickly moved out of those spaces. I think we also talked about the traditional values. We recognize that what might be a benefit for some is a cost to another. Right, which is, I think Debbie said the same thing, and that how we can't get away from that. Perhaps maybe a government planner or investor will privilege one group over the other, which makes sense if you have a mission. But it also provides a very rich ground for a discussion and a dialogue between the two groups. And then in our group, I mean, I should have said both Dibya and Barun were involved in the development of this field testing of this in Nepal with the community. And Barun raised also the point that for the methodology, which we didn't have a lot of time to talk about, that you started out with women's groups, men's groups, and other various types of groups, had individual discussions first within those groups, and then brought the two groups together and compared, and how rich that dialogue was for maybe men who had never seen it from a woman's perspective, women who may not have seen it from a man's perspective, and had a chance to put those out. And also mentioned the fact was that, in fact, gender, which is often such a difficult thing to talk to people about at the community level, for example, particularly men, this, because it was a cost benefit analysis focus, seemed to have brought in men in a much more amenable, excited way than usually does around a gender conversation. So that's another thing. We also talked about the quantification of the cost, that we do need to somehow put some sort of cost to this. I think this is, for us at WOCAN, still a work in progress. But what we did want to talk about was, at the community level in Nepal, it was surprisingly easy for the community members to assign a cost value to even the benefits as well as the cost, right, Debbie? You were there. So that may have been unexpected, but it was a really interesting finding. So Debbie, do you want to respond to that? I see you nodding your head, or say anything quickly on that.
No, a little bit of on the cost. What happened when, in our experience in the field, when we're doing the costing, if we are with the stakeholders who are directly engaged and involved and know about it, doing the costing was so easy. That was the easiest part. For other things, we had to prove a lot. But when we were in the subnational level with the officials and all, and when there was staffs or people from the institutions who are not really engaged in this, because usually sometimes people who are not engaged go and sit in the design table. And it was so clear that if they are not, wet, in Nepali we say, if they have not wet their hands, they can't do the costing. So that was, identifying the stakeholders to do the cost benefit analysis is the key, I think, so.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Again, pointing to the value of the participatory aspect of this methodology.
Yeah.
Anybody else would like to say something? I don't know how much time we have left. Nisha or Barun, who was involved, or any other participant would like to make any closing points or questions or comments? Jump in if you do. Unmute yourself and jump in.
I think that's fine. Thanks for the session, and then it is interesting to learn about the metrics, and then the process to come up with the metrics. Okay, thanks a lot, Jen.
Well, thank you. It's been, you're not out of the woods yet on. We're really seeking your feedback on this. This is the first time we've presented this draft matrix to a group for feedback. UNDP has us rolling it out in a couple other Asian countries. So we're supposed to do a training in Indonesia, Cambodia. Unfortunately, not in Myanmar. I would have loved to do that yet. So we're trying to see, is it useful? It was a stretch to kind of come up with something like this. So we're going to ask you some survey questions to see if we can get some more information back from you. But we're extremely grateful to you for your very thoughtful comments coming from a number of different places. And we'd just like to continue to get your feedback if you'd like to engage with us to see how this could be made even more useful to you.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, love to do that. So with that, I'll just close. We'd like to say thank you to UNDP for definitely providing us the opportunity to work on this kind of mind-blowing, pioneering intellectual work. And to both my team members of Nisha and Divya, to Barun as well, for providing inputs from the ground level experience and the pilot project. We look forward to hearing from any of you, but for right now, I'll sign off and hand this back to Diana to do the poll. Don't leave the room, please, until you finish the poll. That's important to us. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. This has been a really kind of lively and informative session, and probably one of the most interactive ones that we have lined up at the conference. So it was really great that you're all able to join us today. I would like to say a really big thank you to you, Jeanette, and the WOCAN team for delivering such a great workshop for us. And I feel that if the policymakers and private sector investors are able to use this tool, communities around the world, and especially women, will become much more resilient to climate change. As Jeanette mentioned, we do have one final poll. to do as a post-event survey. So I'm going to ask my colleagues to launch that as I speak, please. And we would be super grateful if you could complete this, as the feedback will be really valuable for the team going forward. And this poll will not be published to the wider audience today. It's just for kind of internal feedback. Whilst you're completing that poll, I would like to acknowledge that the AVPN conference has been made possible with the kind support of our lead partners, Chandler Foundation, Stockholm Environment Institute, and the EDAM Prize. Our knowledge partner for Climate Day is WOCAN, and their partner in creating the tool is UNDP. Once you have finished the post-event survey, please feel free to say goodbye in the group chat and visit the AVPN 2020 conference website. And also please visit the climate and gender platforms. Both of these platforms enable you to identify synergies with our members, find deals, connect with our SPOs, and you can share your blogs, case studies, and success stories. So all of the links to those web pages will be put in the group chat as we speak. We hope you'll join us for the next session. The next one for the conference is starting at 2 p.m. Singapore time and is titled Uncovering Hidden Pockets of Climate Finance. My colleagues can also post the link to the session description page through which you will be able to join. And finally, please do share your highlights of the session on social media and remember to tag us using the hashtag AVPN 2020. So from the team at AVPN, thank you so much and goodbye.
Bye everyone, thank you.